Hello, my name is Jason Boczar, and I'm the Digital Scholarship and Publishing Librarian at the University of South Florida in Tampa, Florida. I'll be speaking about how the publishing program at USF, due to impacts in the library, scaled down publishing services to its open access journals, how we handled the transition, and what's in store for us in the future. First, I'd like to give some background into the USF Library's publishing program. The libraries first began publishing open access journals in 2008. That number is now up to over 20 journals. We use bPress's Digital Commons platform for our institutional repository and the journal publishing platform. Before the changes I'll be talking about took place, we had 4 people working in the OA journal unit, 1 librarian, 2 administrative staff, and 1 staff member. Since I'll be talking a lot about the services we offer journal editors, I'd like to quickly mention our process in building the relationships with our editors. Upon receiving a request to host an open access journal, the library, often involving a library administrator, would begin negotiations with the editors. Eventually, this resulted in a memorandum of understanding that set in writing the responsibilities of the library and the journal editors. An important point to make that affected the publishing program from the beginning is that while there are some services that the library offered consistently to all journals, there was a wide range of services between the different journals. For instance, while the library would provide support to one journal for layout services, for another journal the library would not support this. The history of a journal can determine these factors. For instance, if a journal is being converted from a non-OA title to an OA title, they might want to maintain a sense of consistency in their look and feel. In the initial negotiation and signing of the MOU, the library might offer layout services for this journal. All this to say that the USF Library's publishing unit had reached a point where scaling up wouldn't happen unless additional staff were added, and there was no sign of that happening in the near future. In fact, in the past 5 years, there had been a 0.5 FTE increase in staff for OA publishing. And so, eventually, with a non-increasing staff, we reached a bottleneck and we couldn't add new journals. And then 2020 happened. COVID-19 hit and the budget of the library was impacted, which included a 15% budget cut. The primary area affected by the cut was the collections. It involved the dismantling of big packages and a realignment of resources and how the collection would look going forward. I won't go into the details about the steps and stages the library has gone through in cutting the materials budget. It's really another talk altogether. But it's important to mention this because it affected the publishing unit. If you'd like more information about the budget cuts and how the library is handling the future of its collections, please check out the link in the slide. And because the materials budget was being cut, there were 2 things the library had to do. 1, invest human resources into evaluating the collection. This was essential because the library wanted to perform an assessment on the collection to make the best decisions on human resources possible. The tricky part in doing this was the necessary turnaround time. With big packages due for renewal in as little as a few months, the library needed to act quickly on its assessment. This process involved increased data analysis. And 2, the library had to communicate this information to the university and to the faculty. These changes to the collection would not only involve the entire library, it would include the university. The dean of the library has appointed a group of librarians to assess the collection and technical services department with communicating information to faculty. In addition to this, one of the staff members from the publishing unit began working across departments in the library to help ensure that any faculty that had questions were able to get in touch with the appropriate people in the library. I received notice that a decision had been made that the library was no longer going to support OA journal publishing, and that 2 staff members from the unit were moving to different departments. The library was unable to hire new staff, and in order to meet the budget goals, these new departments required more staffing. Thankfully, after discussions with library administration, this full cut of journal publishing didn't take place. The 2 staff members still moved to different departments, however. And since we were already at a bottleneck with journals, something really had to give. We needed to reevaluate what services we were offering to our journals, we needed to scale back, but we also needed to maintain consistency. So the staff members shifted, resulting in 2 people moving to different departments. And this would take place in January 2021. In the months leading up to that, the publishing unit could put all of our resources into a smooth transition. The publishing unit, in consultation with the Associate Dean, determined the exact services we could continue offering. We notified the editors, made addendums to the MOUs, and provided any training or support to the editors. And we were going from 4 people down to 2, and with over 20 journals, we had to determine what was reasonably feasible to support. Keeping in mind that our full-time jobs are not entirely supporting journals, we were also maintaining the IR, preparing to integrate our digital collections into the IR. We are merging 2 campus IRs into one, in addition to just providing other scholarly communication support to USF. The services we could offer had to be important to the editors and easy for the library to implement. An important consideration in which services we continue to offer depended on how much time it would take for the library staff to perform the tasks. Luckily, over time, we have automated much of the workflow. For instance, previously, staff members filled in an XML document for Crossref DOI registration by copy-pasting information from the article page. However, using Digital Commons OAI PMH functionality, we were able to develop a shell script that enabled us to simply select the journal, which volume and issue numbers, and it would generate a Crossref formatted XML file. Similarly, for journals indexed in DOAJ, library staff members previously used the website input form to enter articles in one at a time. But using the same shell script as the Crossref transformation, we were able to also generate a DOAJ formatted XML file for inclusion. These scripts were developed, or in some cases built upon other projects such as Janice Chan's style sheet, long before COVID-19 had started, and certainly before there were any notice that the units would need to stop providing services to journals, which is part of our normal process of just trying to make the production of journals just smoother and easier. It's something naturally that we did, but it ended up having a huge benefit when, unknown to us down the road, would be told that we would have to cancel the open access journal publishing program. It was one of the things that enabled us to keep the program going, was that we had already automated a lot of this. But one thing we couldn't automate is layouts and graphic support, and so those were discontinued. And these areas really did take up a disproportionate amount of time for library staff, especially compared to other areas such as the automated services just mentioned. In order to ensure a smooth transition, the library did collect all the graphics and layout materials we had, including all InDesign templates and workflow documents, and we handed all of those over to the editors. We also strongly encouraged the editors to set up a time with us for some training. And there was also the possibility of the journals using a simpler method for their journals, such as using Microsoft Word with the Digital Commons built-in header and footer stamping that they could consider. One important consideration throughout the entire process was how it was going to affect the editors. While there have been a lot of changes happening to the library to necessitate these changes in service levels, there isn't any denying that this would affect some of our journals and their future workflows. We wanted to provide as much time as we could to the editors. As soon as we knew that this was happening, we notified every editor. As soon as we were able to determine what services we would continue offering and which ones we weren't able to offer into the future, we notified them. We updated all of the MOUs with an addendum that would signify the services that we would continue to perform and what we were canceling. And we also emphasized that we were available for any training they required until January 1st, 2021. For instance, if they required training on how to use the InDesign templates, as I mentioned, they could schedule a meeting with us and we would walk them through it. If they needed assistance in figuring out a new workflow for their articles, because maybe they were used to the library uploading all the final versions of articles, well, they would have to learn the system, and we were offering training for them to learn how the ins and outs of Digital Commons and how it would work. And so throughout all of this, there's been a constant refrain throughout the entire library, and that's basically that none of us want to do this. And obviously, no one wanted COVID-19 to happen, and this is an indirect consequence of COVID-19. Budgets to academic libraries caused the workflow changes in our open access journals, and caused a change for our editors that they weren't anticipating. We didn't want to do this to our editors, and we tried our best to continue offering as many services as we could, and especially the ones that we thought would be essential to their continued publication, such as the DOIs and DOAJ metadata. And perhaps unsurprisingly, despite our best efforts, not everything went smoothly after January 1st, 2021. If the offered training wasn't accepted, and they had questions later, we were obligated to provide information to the editor, but we weren't going to do the work ourselves anymore. And previously, if an editor needed updates to their journal site, then the library production editors would make the changes on the editor's behalf. And this method stopped as part of this transition. The editors, or someone working with the journal, would need to make these changes, and even after the library was no longer providing the support, and some of them still emailed the library asking for it. So it was a little bit of a lesson in how to say no. And just to really conclude, and while this talk has mostly been about how we work to downsize our publishing program and the immediate why we had to, I've also been thinking about exponential growth, and I think maybe many of us have thought about this before. I've been thinking about how maybe it's a symptom of Western capitalism combined with the way higher education is increasingly being run like a business, the ever-increasing race to the largest grant dollars. We all have limited number of resources, but are often expected to produce higher metrics or higher numbers than the previous year. And really, these topics are too large to talk about in this talk and to even end this talk in. But I don't presume to have the answers, but it might be worthwhile to think about library publishing in the context of exponential growth, and if this is something that can or should be addressed. And while this whole process was tough on the USF Libraries publishing unit, and it was tough for some of the editors, I think in the end that this streamlined approach could actually enable the program to come back stronger in the future. With a new set of standards, we can adequately scale to support new journals. And while there is the concept of exponential growth, and the ideas that we'll keep increasing our numbers aren't going to happen immediately, maybe in the future we'll be able to continue doing that. Thank you very much.